Hello, everybody. I'm Richard Sher, and once again, it's time to square off. Here's breaking news as we begin this week's square off. 3 teenagers, one 15, one 16, one 17, have been shot outside of Carver Vocational High School on West Preston Street in West Baltimore. The shooter ran away. Their injuries are said to not be life-threatening. The school put on lockdown. Parents asked not to come to the school, but to wait for further information. Thiru, this was not our main topic, just a word about this from you.
I mean, it's so frustrating because it happens with such great frequency that our young people are both the victims and perpetrators of these crimes that it no longer shocks the conscience. And if this was a mass shooting where 15 or 16 young people were killed in one event, it would be national news. But because we spread it across the year and we spread it across different parts of the city, it barely makes the news. We'll talk about it this morning, and by Saturday morning, we'll be preparing for the Ravens game.
Well, okay. Here in Baltimore City, there's been a string of pre-dawned armed carjackings and robberies. This week, between the hours of 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., as many as 5 to 10 suspects, some with guns, they pull up or walk up. They surround the victims on the street. They rob them. They steal their vehicles. Neighborhood leaders urging extreme caution in Canton, Patterson Park, Highlandtown, Butchers Hill, all across the city. Bob Scher, what's your reaction to what this means for our city?
We talk about this all the time. It's been going on for years and years and years. Nothing shocks me anymore. The only difference now than from years ago is that these criminals do it in broad daylight. They don't even cover their faces half the time because they know they're not going to get caught. And it's the same problem, and nothing's going to change. Number one, until we take care of a couple problems, which isn't going to happen. Number one, we need more police. There is a gigantic shortage of police officers in Baltimore City. We got to beef up the police department. Now, if you can't attract people, and I know it's not the greatest job in the world, especially in Baltimore, then you've got to get outside help. State police. You got to augment the police department if you can't find another way to do it. I've said this on this show, and everybody looks at me like I'm crazy, but I'm going to say it again. Call up the National Guard. That will be a deterrent for a lot of this stuff. That's the first problem. Got to beef up the police. Number two, the sentencing in the courthouses, the judges. They get light sentences, or they're waved down to juvenile court and treated as juveniles where they get no jail time. And then if you get jail time, they release them because of good credits. All this has to change.
Ruth Ann, I know you can relate to this. Let me read this. A female victim during that spree I just talked about. She was loading her Toyota in the morning for a later happening that she was attending. She was near Canton Square. In the early morning hours, her words, these are her words, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys got out of a car, started screaming at me, give us everything, give us everything, give us everything. One had a gun to her head, and they took her cell phone, punched her in the face, and ran away. Ruth Ann, you can relate to this.
Yeah, I think I've said on this show before, February 5th of 2022, I had a gun to my head thrown out of a car stolen. It was in Minneapolis. The terror is the same. Just this week, a few days ago, around the corner of my house here in Otterbein, we had 2 cars pull up. People jump out with guns. Same thing happened. And what I'm told, or what I've heard, is the same 5 young people did the same thing over in Highlandtown, Canton area. First of all, let's recognize this. Murders may be going down, but people living in Baltimore are feeling terrorized.
Absolutely.
Right? I don't feel that I can walk my dog at night. I don't feel that I can do normal things like come in from the airport into my house without worry of being jumped or having a gun put to my head. And so that is the human response that is happening here. We have to increase patrols in some way, some fashion, some presence, so that people at least feel there is an effort that is being done that responds to the human condition of this. I have been the biggest advocate for getting to root causes of why people turn to these kinds of actions, why there's just this kind of pull to this. But we have to have both that investment and enforcement. And there has to be enforcement here. There has to be a sense that this is a priority to protect the quality of life of citizens, or Baltimore will continue to see flight from the city at a time when we have a governor who wants to invest so greatly. So I'm urging the city, we've got to do something different.
Thiru, I saw you start to take a breath. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, look, I couldn't agree more with Bob and Ruth Ann. The reason why we have to invest in root causes is because if we have true universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds, in 8 or 9 or 10 years, when they're about to become teenagers, we're going to be in a better position with respect to those kids. Absolutely, we have to invest in that. But we also have to acknowledge the fact that there are 12, 13, 14, and 15-year-olds that have been failed by decisions we made 10 years ago that are right now on the hunt. And one of the things that is contributing to this is that they absolutely have no fear of consequences. They believe that they will get away with this over and over again. Bob, let me give a little bit of color to this. We need 600, perhaps 700 more police officers, and we needed them yesterday. That's not about zero tolerance or mass incarceration. It's about making sure we have enough detectives to work homicide cases. It's making sure that we have enough patrol to deter and detect crime. Those things absolutely have to happen. So, this is an instance where I'm glad to hear that everybody is on the same page. And I know we'll talk more about sort of the judicial sentencing. The reality is that if we don't send a signal to young people that there are consequences for their conduct, then they will, like young people and old people will do, they will continue to engage in bad behavior.
Baltimore City Councilman Zeke Cohn says, quote, "We're not talking about childhood mischief here. We're talking about violent assaults on elderly folks or just plain people in their neighborhoods. This is creating, as Ruth Ann said, an aura of fear in our communities, and there are many people who are afraid and are not interested in coming back to Baltimore." I'll tell you what we're going to do. Quick break with Howard, the voice of Scherr. Then we'll talk about what happened up in Lewiston, Maine, in a terrible, terrible mass shooting. Howard?
Yep, I'm here. I'm here. All right, I'm sure you've seen some of the Barry Glazer TV commercials. They're different. They get your attention. They also get you results. That's why Barry Glazer and his team, including an in-house doctor, make no apologies for getting every penny they can from insurance companies. So when it comes to personal injury or medical malpractice, there's only one choice. That's Barry Glazer. Give him a call at 410-547-8568. You know, there are a lot of diners in Baltimore, and the most famous of them all are the Double T diners. TT, totally terrific. You're sure to find the best breakfast, lunch, or dinner at the Double T Diner's enormous menu selections. There's a Double T Diner in Route 40, Perry Hall, White Marsh, Bel Air, Laurel, Annapolis, Pasadena, and the EC Diner in Ellicott City. Plus, try By the Docks in Middle River for their Monday night lobster special. They're all in the Double T family. Now back to you, Richard.
Delicious. Thanks so much.
Richard, before you get started, can I just go back to that last topic and add one more thought?
Absolutely. Sure.
All right, thank you. The city councilman, Costello, attacked the mayor, said, "Where is your crime plan? This is outrageous, blah, blah, blah." I don't understand it. This is so basic. This is so common sense. Why does he say to the mayor, "What is your crime plan?" Here's the problem. These kids are robbing people in broad daylight, and then they're going to another neighborhood and robbing those people in broad daylight, and it goes on and on. Why? Because they know they're not going to get caught. Why are they not going to get caught? There is a shortage of police officers. You don't have to ask the mayor, what's your crime plan? Get more police officers to arrest these people, or National Guard or state police. Get help. That you don't have to go beyond that. You don't have to ask the mayor, what's your plan? The plan is arrest people. You don't have anybody to do the arresting. Get people. End of story.
Go ahead, Ruth. Ruth Ann.
Look, the infighting amongst people in city council and the mayor are really not the issue that I'm concerned with, right? Eric Costello happens to be my city council person. I think he's at wit's end. I'm sure the mayor is at wit's end. I'm not even thinking about that, right? We do have to recruit people in, but we need good policing. We need smart policing. We need strategic policing. I'm not saying the city's not trying to do that, but as a citizen, that's what we need. I don't know enough to say we need more people or less people. What I do know is that we've got to feel presence in neighborhoods across the city, because crime is happening across the city, and we need to have balanced and just policing happening, right? No doubt. But I think there needs to be a strategy explained to communities when these things happen as well.
Okay.
So there needs to be more communication there.
Our final word on this, because we want to get to Lewiston, Maine, and hopefully the new Speaker of the House. Go ahead, Thiru, with your final.
The fact that we're down 600 police officers is a challenge. It's also an opportunity. Ruth Ann is absolutely right. We have a chance to rebuild and reimagine this police force. We can have more local police officers, more minority police officers, more professional police officers, more women and immigrant police officers. We can build the police force that we have, in part because we have 600 vacancies, and then we can start doing the basic blocking and tackling. The part that's frustrating for me about Costello and Cohn's comments is it's just like $1 short and a day late. Like, it's election season, it's around the corner. So everybody's now, running to the center. Everybody's suddenly tough on crime. Like, I just wish that in the off season, when people are still getting shot and robbed, they would say the same things.
Excellent topic. Way to go. Now let's talk about this other mass shooting that was a breaking story all week long up in Lewiston, Maine, the second largest city in Maine, 37,000. That's like half a crowd at a Ravens game. 18 innocent people executed. 13 others were shot and injured, 3 critically. The massacre happening at a restaurant and a bowling alley. Police say the shooter is 40-year-old Robert Card. He is a member of the U.S. Army Reserves. He's a certified firearms instructor. This happens to be the 565th mass shooting in the United States this year. Speak up, Bob.
Most of these mass shootings, in most of those cases, there were warning signs that the person had a mental issue, or he was bullied, or he was this, or he was that. In this case, everybody had warning on this guy. I mean, this guy acted out at a National Guard or a reserve facility, National Guard Armory.
Right.
And they actually referred him for mental health counseling. And apparently he spent 2 weeks this past summer in a mental health facility.
In July.
And he threatened to get him into that facility. He threatened to blow up and shoot people. I mean, you can't get more straight than that. They had all the warnings in the world, and they did not attempt to take away his guns. Now, red flag laws are the way to go with this, okay? And a lot of states now have them. Apparently, Maine has something called a yellow flag law. The only difference between yellow flag and red flag are the people that can file the petition. In Maine, with the yellow flag law, only law enforcement can file a petition to temporarily try and take firearms away from that person. In red flag states, such as Maryland, it's not just law enforcement that can file a petition. It can be the spouse, the girlfriend, the ex-girlfriend. It can be people that actually know this person who can file a petition and ask the court to temporarily take handguns away or weapons. That was not done in this case. it should have been done in this case. It's not being utilized, these red flag laws, anywhere.
Richard,
But they had warning. They had warning that this guy was a problem.
Can
Richard,
I
just-
weigh in here for a minute, please, Thiru?
Sure.
Thank you.
of course.
My organization works in Lewiston, Maine. I have employees who are on lockdown with their children in Maine today. But I have to say, last night, I sent a note to Jared Golden, who is the congressman who represents Lewiston and who I know well, who has finally turned a page to say that he is in favor of an assault weapons ban. And I think that to me, that's the first time I can remember in any of these mass shootings, a congressman standing up and changing their position. I mean, I'm sure it maybe has happened, but that has to happen in Congress. It has to happen across this country. And there is no doubt we need to strengthen laws that if we get people who are going through mental health, emotional crises, we have the means to be able to disarm them and disarm them rightfully for a period of time that makes sense, right, to protect the public. But the truth of the matter is, we will never know in the human condition who is going to have a mental break at any point in time. And there has to be gun control. We have to disarm this country. We have the 500 plus shootings in this country because we have a proliferation of guns, and the Second Amendment written back in the Stone Age needs to be revisited by this country, or we are all at risk, and we will live on the edge of risk at all time. We're at risk right now to go to the grocery store, to go to a place of worship, to go to the Inner Harbor, go to an Orioles game. We're all at risk, and we've got to get ahead as a country soulfully on the issue of guns.
Go ahead, Bob.
Ruth Ann, you're 100% wrong. I disagree with you. I think that
Not you, but I still love you.
law-abiding citizens have the right to arm themselves. And I'm not talking about because the Second Amendment says so. I'm talking about common sense. The law-abiding citizen has a right to protect himself. He or she is not the problem. The problem is not passing more laws to prevent law-abiding citizens from being able to have a gun. The problem are the criminals. You can pass 25 more gun control laws, and the criminal is still going to take a weapon and go out and carry it. He's your problem. Your problem is the person that's not following the law. You don't get this problem from law-abiding citizens, and they should have the right to protect themselves.
All right,
And the statistics show, my last comment on this. I want to
give respect to Thiru, but here's the thing, Bob.
Wait a minute, let me just finish. I didn't finish. My last comment on this. If you look at statistics, and there have been studies on this, you will find that in states or cities where they allow law-abiding citizens to easily obtain a gun, violent crime is lower there than in strong gun control states like Maryland.
All right. Thiru, I know you want to talk, and we want to hear from you.
Look, I'm an optimist about so many things. I am not optimistic that we will be able to see change at the federal level because of all the political obstacles. And I'm not sure we can put the genie back in the bottle. We are literally swimming in a sea of guns. And so what we have to do is find the places of consensus. Bob and Ruth Ann agree about the need to address mental health and red flag laws and strict consequences for that. Let's do that. The challenge for Bob is that even if we want to say law-abiding citizens need to have access to these firearms for constitutional or common sense reasons, the line between the law-abiding citizen and the person who is gone off the deep end, so to speak, and I'm being, colloquial, who is struggling with mental health, who is struggling with demons, is a fine line that is very difficult to police. But at the end of the day, if we can't do anything about gun control, at a minimum, that ought to increase the momentum and the necessity of doing the other things.
Yeah, one of the,
This guy that went into the bowling alley and the restaurant and killed these people. I don't care what laws were in existence. If he wanted to do that, he was going to get a rifle and he was going to go in there and do it. And you can pass 25 more laws and he would still get a rifle and go in there and do it. It's that simple.
The problem is the casualty count. I mean, look, I don't want to get drawn into the assault weapons thing, but the ability to kill dozens of people quickly is only available because people are carrying around AR-15s. It's not that easy to kill people. And so if you have a, Beretta with 8 in the chamber, you got to shoot. You're going to miss 3 or 4 times. And by the time you're reloading, somebody's tackled you. That is not an option with an AR-15. That is why every mass shooting with 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 casualties involves these weapons of war.
Yeah, and
When
I mean, I think that's the case right there.
guys,
But what I was going to say to Bob earlier is this: people get into domestic relationships, people describe as normal human beings, good neighbors, etc., right? And they have a break, and the next thing we know. But I agree with Thiru, and on this assault weapons issue, it is why law enforcement did not have an opportunity to respond, because this happened so quickly and so fast in such a mass casualty way. We've got to get real about this, Bob. We've got to get real that assault weapons do not have a place in personal ownership.
Bob, you got to wrap.
All right, the word assault weapon is misused a lot. There's 2 types of weapons that we should be talking about that are lumped together and shouldn't be lumped together. The kind of an automatic weapon where you pull the trigger once and a bunch of rounds, a bunch of bullets come flying out on one pull, they should be outlawed. But a rifle where you have to pull the trigger every time you want to shoot a round does not need to be outlawed.
All right,
Let me just say, we need to save humanity here.
All right. Amen. Amen. Here's Howard. When we come back, there is finally a speaker of the House of Representatives. Howard, go ahead.
Thank you, Richard. For fine dining, special occasions, or just watching sports in their sports bars, Pappas should be your #1 choice. Enjoy a Pappas crab cake, or as Richard calls it, the fab cake, which is Oprah's favorite, but one of the many delicious choices on the Pappas menu. Plus, Pappas ships their crab cakes all over the country, with 4 locations, including their newest sports bar and restaurant in Bel Air. See you at Pappas. And Leading Edge Auto Body and Mechanical Repair want you to know that the insurance companies cannot tell you where to take your car. Richard and his family have been taking their cars to Leading Edge for years. They work on all makes and models. They offer free pickup anywhere in the Baltimore area. So call Leading Edge at 410-433-6433 or visit them at 5807 Falls Road in Mount Washington. They make your car look and run like new again. Back to you, Richard.
And Jeff Siegel, the owner of Leading Edge, guarantees it. Guarantees it. They really take care of you. Promise. All right. So after 3 weeks of utter chaos, the House of Representatives finally has its speaker. He is Mike Johnson. He's a totally pro-Trump Republican. Representative Matt Gaetz has named the new speaker MAGA Mike, who is a Trumper from head to toe. Thiru, what is your thought on this?
I mean, look, as a proud Democrat, I am enjoying the clown show. But what I will tell you is this: I have always wanted sensible, common sense, centrist governance. The Republican Party is in such disarray. They have surrendered any entitlement to lead this country until they figure out what they are going to do. If we had this kind of disarray in the Democratic Party, if the extremists of our party were controlling who was the Speaker of the House and we didn't have sensible government, I would be saying the same thing about the Democratic Party. I am very sorry for my Republican friends, because they ought to be better represented by their party and by their leadership. And right now, it is a clown show.
Bob?
I appreciate Thiru saying that he feels sorry for me because I'm not being properly represented, and I appreciate it, and I agree with you. I'm not being properly represented by the party that I belong to. All right, it has been a clown show, and I agree with everything you said. But I was not in favor of Mike Johnson. I did not, being the speaker, I did not want somebody from the Freedom Caucus, because we would have the same problem that we've had all for the last year. All right. I wanted a moderate Republican. But I got to tell you something. I heard Mike Johnson last night interviewed. I was very pleasantly surprised. I really was. I did not want him. I was very surprised. I think he's going to be terrific. He was interviewed. First of all, he's been called a racist. He's been called everything in the book. All right, let's start with the racist issue. He has a black child who he adopted. He's not a racist. That's number one. He's got 4 kids, 1 adopted. Number 2, gay marriage. He was opposed to gay marriage. Okay, and he has that reputation now of being anti-gay. He explained himself. He was involved in a case where at the time the gay marriage issue was before the court, he was involved in being opposed to it. Once the Supreme Court ruled that gay marriage is legal, he says, I'm fine with it. He says, I support the law. I don't want to even change it. So the interviewer, and it was Hannity, asked him, he said, well, are you going to talk about gay marriage and abortion as being the speaker? Is that going to be on your agenda? He says, no, I'm not trying to change either one of them. He said, all right. He said, gay marriage, I'm fine with it. That's the law of the land. He says on abortion, he said the Supreme Court reversed Roe versus Wade, leaving it to the states. I'm going to leave it to the states. I'm not trying to make a national ban. I think he's going to be excellent. If you listen, Google it. Come up with this interview from last night. It was terrific. You may like him. You may be surprised.
Ruth Ann has some things to say too.
As a woman here, the speaker causes me deep concern. I would say that this is a wolf in sheep's clothing, but we have elected a Speaker of the House who calls into question the integrity of elections. And the 2020 election was the safest, cleanest election in the history of the United States, as reported by Trump's own people running those elections and through Homeland Security. The fact that we have someone who supported the big lie on elections alone is a disqualification to be second in line to the presidency of the United States, bar none. And if people cannot get that, the peril of our democracy, which was already bad, is now paramountly worse with his election. As a woman, I don't believe him one bit. As a member of the LGBTQ community, I do not believe him one bit about his bias. If I was in his presence of the lack of dignity that he gives me as a human being. So I oppose him on so many levels, but mostly because of our democracy.
Thiru and then Bob. I know Bob's jumping. But Thiru.
As an ally and advocate of Ruth Ann's point, I will just say this. I'm glad Mike Johnson doesn't have that much to say about what I or any of us do in our bedroom. That's great. The fact that, Bob, that brings you some comfort is, in my mind, a measure of lowering your expectations within the Republican Party. There may be some redeeming positions that he is now clarifying, but that shouldn't be our marker. I see this in our party as well. We talk about how, Brandon Scott doesn't have any convictions. Sheila Dixon isn't incompetent. When did we get to a world where we are okay with people that question and challenge the fundamental cornerstones of our democracy, that have gotten in line with some of the worst demagoguery, the worst features of humanity that have emerged over the last couple of years, and we say, yeah, but at least they honor some recent Supreme Court precedent. How have we gotten to this position? And I say that about my party too. I hear people defend, Democrats and saying, well, at least they're not blank. We used to have a time when our political leaders were the best of us. They were the aspirational visions of what we thought our kids could grow up to be. Now it's, at least they're not in jail. At least they are not Donald Trump. I wish and pray for more.
All right, Bob,
Here's my response.
Bob, we're going to give you the final word on this.
All right.
Go ahead.
Democrats are upset, supposedly, because Tom Emmer did not become the speaker. Do you know the Democrats, if they were sincere about that, they could have voted for him? If the Democrats would have voted for any Republican they wanted that they thought was moderate enough, they could have selected the Republican, and all they would need is about 6 other Republicans to support them, and they could have picked the Republican speaker. But they played a game and they voted for Jeffries, knowing Jeffries cannot be the speaker because he's not going to get enough votes. And they like what happened. But if they were sincere, they could have picked the Republican speaker. That's number one. And number two, as far as Johnson being a Trumper, he supported Trump exercising his rights to contest the election legally. Okay? In other words, just like Al Gore contested the election against Bush legally. The difference is when Gore lost and the courts ruled against him, he accepted the president. So did Johnson. Johnson did not do anything illegal like the group that's indicted now. All Johnson did was support Trump's legal attempt to exercise his rights, just like Al Gore did.
Bob, I suggest that you look at the record.
Bob, I want to thank all of you, but finally, before we leave today, we send our sincerest condolences and love to the families of Baltimore City firefighters Rodney W. Pitts III and Lieutenant Dylan J. Ronaldo. Both died from injuries suffered battling a 2-alarm fire last week on Linden Heights Avenue in Northwest Baltimore. And also to all the members of the Baltimore City Fire Department, thank you for what you do to keep us safe. We'll see you next week. Same place, when once again we square off. Goodbye.